Okay, we are really fortunate indeed to have with us a terrific closing keynoter. Chairman Stearns, we had Senator DeNint here earlier, and Marcia Blackburn, so we're really pleased that you're here. I'm going to do the, I've got the full bio, as I've said, along with the photo in the brochure, and so I'm going to do the shorter version so we can give Congressman Stearns plenty of time. He was first elected in 1988 to the House of Representatives, and that was his only elected office. And for this Congress, and importantly for us here today, he's chairman of the Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee in the Energy and Commerce Committee. In addition to that position, he serves on the Commerce Committee, Subcommittee on Communications and Technology, and the Manufacturing and Trade Subcommittee. Like Senator DeNint and Congressman Blackburn, who we've already heard, Chairman Stearns, I did say he was chairman, didn't I, of the Oversight, I did, the Oversight and Investigations Committee. Chairman Stearns is a leading voice, not only in the communications area, for which he's been a leader over the years, but also from his oversight perch on many, many national issues, including, I think, recently being in the news looking into the Solyndra affair. I can just refer to it as that. He attended GWU, George Washington University, and following graduation served 4 years in the Air Force as an aerospace engineer during the Vietnam War. Chairman Stearns, we're delighted to have you with us again. Thank you very much.
Randy, thank you very much, and I'm also delighted to be here. I come from a congressional district, it's North Central Florida. I represent the University of Florida, the flagship university of the state of Florida, and I go up from Jacksonville down just above Orlando and Leesburg. And it's an interesting district. I have, shall we say, the university plus Jacksonville, and plus I have a lot of rural areas. And I have a lot of farmers, cow farmers, and in Ocala, my hometown, I have thoroughbreds, and so it's a very diverse district. I'm reminded of an introduction I got up in Gilchrist County, which is west of Gainesville. The farmer's name was Fecterly, and he introduced me. He said to all his farm friends, he said, "I have an introduction. Stearns was born at a very early age in a hospital to be near his mother." Stearns? That was the kind of introduction I got. So I'm always appreciative of a short introduction. So I guess what we're talking about here, you're celebrating, it says the part of this process is to celebrate your anniversary. And I wish you continued success, obviously. The Free State Foundation has stood at the forefront, I think, of telecommunications policy for the last 5 years, and I can't express how much we appreciate your leadership and your active, proactive activities. You've been a strong, free market-based voice against net neutrality. All of us know about that. Burdensome regulation at the FCC. Obviously the need for the Commission to reform the Universal Service Fund and the inter-carrier compensation policies. And of course, there's so many other topics that you've been involved with, and I've been involved with too, as a ranking Republican for many years on the Telecommunications Subcommittee. When I was preparing for my hearing on the regulatory burdens of independent agencies, Randy met with members of my staff and not only pointed out the flaws in the FCC's review process, which was helpful, but offered solutions. And his forbearance proposal is a great step, which is much needed to direct and address some of the telecom policies in the 21st century. I think all of us realize we see the convergence with the new iPad and the new iPhone, and we see what's happening on our cell phones, and many of my staff have no land lease lines, or all using their cell phones. And between the television, the wireless, high definition, three-dimensional, as well as the mobile devices, this convergence is all coming together, and pretty soon we'll have television on C-SPAN on our wireless, and as well as being able to have broadband up in 4, 5, 6G. So this convergence calls, I think, in a large sense, to update the Telecommunication Act of 1996, and I hope we can continue to do that, and your foundation is helpful in that respect. This technology that we're seeing is really transforming our life. I think, and I saw a demonstration of that Steve Jobs did, where you actually have a hologram off your wireless device, so that if I wanted to talk to my wife now, I could put this hologram on the wall, and she could put a hologram on her wall, and we can actually see each other in high definition, and that's not too far away. I think they were all mourn the death of the CEO of Apple and realized the broad capability he created for this country and what he did to transform it. I know that I had one of the original Macintosh Apple computers back in the early 80s, and I only wish I bought stock in Apple back then. I think many of you wish you had too. Just briefly, Randy asked me to go through and give you an overview of what's happening in Congress. This summer I spent an inquiry into the FCC requesting information on the number of backlogs at the Commission. I was extremely disappointed to hear of the high volume of pending applications, and I'm working with Greg Wallen, who's now the chairman of the Telecommunications Subcommittee, to see if we can write a report on the problems we found, and this should be available, I'm hopeful, in the next couple of weeks. I'm still working with the Subcommittee on Communication and Technology, where I was the chairman for 6 years, on this legislation to reform, I was a ranking member, to reform the FCC. This is one of the things that me and my staff have been working with. We'd like to introduce a bill to allow the FCC commissioners to appoint an engineer on their staff to help make important decisions. And I'm working on building co-sponsors and incorporating this bill into the FCC process legislation with Greg Walden. In promoting process reform at the FCC, I thought I'd touch on a couple of things we're looking at. The sunshine rules, I think all of you understand. Under the current sunshine laws, only 2 commissioners may meet outside the construct of an official opening meeting. In theory, such a requirement promotes open discussion of issues under consideration, but in reality, the reality is most commissioners' business is conducted by circulating these drafts or orders for comment to get around the sunshine requirements. And of course, in the end, this ultimately turns out to be less transparency for all of us and not more. Another issue is timeliness of the FCC decisions. Licensing applications have been sitting at the FCC for years with essentially no action. There's a multi-year backlog at the Bureau level where hundreds of applications that have been sitting there gathering dust. And furthermore, the FCC internal shot clock to act on mergers or license transfers is 6 months. Yet the XM Sirius merger took over 16 months, and of course the Comcast NBC merger took almost a year. So merger reviews, when approving a merger, the FCC often places conditions on the 2 companies that are not specific to the merger itself. The more appropriate place to address these policy questions is in the rulemaking, open to comment process. And text of orders is another one. When the FCC adopts a decision, the text should quickly become public and published in the Federal Register. As we all know, the FCC's net neutrality order, a good example, was released in December, was only recently published in the Federal Register, and so if you're waiting, you have to wait a long time, delaying companies who seek to challenge the order because you don't know what you're going to challenge. And as you know, as chairman of the Oversight investigation that Randy mentioned, I appreciate and I anticipate a packed agenda for my subcommittee this fall into next year. In addition, healthcare and energy, the subcommittee will continue to be very active on the telecom issues, with the oversight being broad jurisdiction, including health and energy, and the Federal Trade Commission as well. Recently, I had an opportunity to call in Cass Sunstein. Perhaps many of you know he's the administrator at the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. President Obama has given him the responsibility. He's a constitutional lawyer from the University of Chicago, a good friend of the president, and they asked him to comply with the president's executive order, where he basically said we're going to do a cost-benefit analysis across all the government agencies at the time he did that, he did not include the independent agencies like the FCC, but he subsequently has included that. So we had a hearing with Cass Sunstein about what he was going to do and some of the regulations he was going to eliminate. And of course, we asked him about the FCC. While Chairman Janikowski was not unavailable, we had to have a hearing. We had a hearing to bring him up to testify. Commissioner McDowell brought to light the enormous amounts of regulations that have been added to the Federal Register and the unnecessary requirements industry must face in order to comply with the FCC mandates. He did a very good job explaining that, and we brought this to attention of Cass Sunstein at the time. Of course, the independent agencies were not covered, so he could not comment much on it. I have contemplated legislation that would incorporate all future reviews of these independent agencies, their rules and regulation. My subcommittee is also monitoring the FCC's recently issued Universal Service and Inter-Carrier Compensation Reform Draft Order. I think many of you know about that. I've sent 2 letters to the agency requesting that they move forward to fix the broken system, and I'm pleased they will address this at their next October meeting. However, it is important for the agency to realize that their work is far from over. Once a high-cost fund is formed, the agency must immediately turn its effort to the contribution side of the fund. My subcommittee has also held a hearing on cybersecurity. This probably Homeland Security has done the same, but we held one. We continue to conduct oversight of the Department of Homeland Security and other federal departments and agencies with respect to their efforts to coordinate security policy for private institutions such as banks, utilities, power companies, and this is in light of the recent hacking and infiltration efforts by the foreign government. So this oversight relates to DHS's effort to identify and secure critical infrastructure, and I think we'll probably have some more hearings on this subject. Let me just sort of briefly conclude with the privacy issue. Many of you know I've been involved with that from the very beginning, and I had a bill that actually passed out of the subcommittee and the full committee. Unfortunately, we could not get one through the Commerce, Consumer Protection, and Manufacturing Committee recently, but I'm very interested in pushing this along, and I felt that the hearings that I had 7 or 8 hearings on privacy, and I'm hoping we'll have more hearings and perhaps use the bill that I have offered, because I think privacy legislation in this country, this time has come, and we should have a privacy bill. I've concluded that consumers don't care if you're a search engine or a broadband provider dealing with privacy. They just want to ensure that their privacy is protected. So we must simply empower the consumers to make this decision. The privacy decisions on their own and not the government deciding for them. I've introduced, as I mentioned, with Jim Matheson, I think many of you know him, a Democrat, a bipartisan piece of legislation which I think provides consumers a clear, simple, and easy way to understand the language. And it also provides incentives for covered entities to enter into strong regulatory standards. I'm encouraged by the self-regulatory standards that companies are adopting online, which is very positive, I think, for members of Congress, and hope they will continue to innovate in this area. So let me just conclude by congratulating all of you on the anniversary. Thank you for your constant supervision and advancing the wisdom of the free market and meeting with the challenges that this nation faces. I think what you see from a lot of the stimulus package, you see venture capitalists from the government side, which many of us are worried about. So I think your organization is doing the great thing by advancing free markets in telecommunications. And I look forward to continuing our collaboration in building a more free and stronger nation. And I'd like to conclude by saying, may the good Lord take a liking to you, but not too soon.
Congressman Stearns has said he'll take just a couple of questions, and then we're going to probably have to get out of here. But you can tell from just listening to the agenda, and boy, you're so busy. You know, I started the program today talking about what we had accomplished over the last 5 years, but saying how much work there still was to be done, and probably always will be. And just listening to the things you're working on sort of proves that point. Okay, do we have any questions? I see Lynn Stanton over here from Telecommunications Reports. Then we may have time for one more after Lynn's.
Thank you, Congressman. You mentioned the bill to put engineers on the staff of the SCC commissioners. Would that be in addition to the attorneys they already have on staff, or would it replace them? And also have you considered whether they need economists on their staffs?
Well, it would be. You know, I think a technical person would be very helpful with them. When we talked to McDonald, and all the commissioners have been in my office, and they all seem to be supportive of the idea of having a technical person. So that would be in addition to.
Someone just traded a lawyer for an economist. And to finish the case. She's open.
Okay, I think I saw Adam Bender, that's the aforementioned Adam Bender. And then Scott, we'll let you go ahead with your questions to this one. Okay.
Thanks for taking the question. You mentioned the next step on USF reform is to go to the interest contribution. Is that something that the FCC can do, or is that something where they might need legislation from Congress?
I think the Congress should do it myself. I think a lot of people politically would like the FCC to do it, so we don't have to make it, because it's some very difficult decisions when you go out there and talk to some of the rural providers, and you talk to the different competing groups, large and small. But I think Congress has a responsibility, and I think it should really be part of the whole package that we're trying to get together through the Subcommittee, to use that as incentive to do it and use it to save money.
Okay, Scott? This is the last question.
Yes, real briefly, Scott Dillon at Competition. Delighted to hear you're talking about updating the 96 Act, given so much of the 34, 84, 92, and 96 laws are way out of date. Just if you could just tell us a little bit more about what your thoughts are behind updating the 96 Act.
Well, you know, obviously Universal Service Fund is one of those areas. It seems to me that there's been consolidation of some of the telecommunications subcommittee, and the smaller ones, whether they're the smaller ones are having more difficulty, and somehow I think there's going to be a revolution in this television presentation of how you get your TV. There appears that some companies are now coming up ways so that you can get it either through microwave, or you can get it through existing spectrum, using it more efficiently. The whole idea that the broadcasters have this spectrum, and we need to expand our spectrum in the military, and we don't have enough spectrum in other countries that are doing it unless we get more spectrum. So maybe we need to have it part of an overall bill where we satisfy different people to make this the possibility we increase spectrum. We give possibility to smaller companies to innovate so we get our television, allow the chip to be in your mobile phone so that you can get FM and AM radio easily. There's a whole myriad of things that I think that if you had a hearing and you heard from the consumers as well as you heard from all the telecommunications companies, big and small, I think we could come up with a new bill that would increase spectrum, increase possibilities, allow, in some cases, companies that are smaller can't get paid on time because for whatever reason they can't cut off service. So there's some intricacies of this thing that should be ironed out to get this next, I think, ferment this next revolution into our telecommunications. And if we don't do it, someone else will do it. And I think the big problem is we don't have enough spectrum, and we've got to make that decision sooner than later.
Well, please join me again. Okay, well, we're going to close it up. I think if you don't get up for just 1 second, because I just want to say about 3 more sentences. And you know what I mean? I'm just going to repeat what I said when we started, because I know a couple of you weren't here then, because it expresses the way that the way that I feel about the Free State Foundation and what we've done and hope to do. I said at the outset that we look forward eagerly to the next 5 years. We know that every day won't bring victories, but we know, and this is most important, that with your support, we will continue to have many successes, continuing to influence public policy in a way that's good for the country, and most importantly, good for the American consumer. So thanks again very much for sharing the Free State Foundation anniversary, and thanks most of all for your friendship. And this concludes it. Thank you.